I would like to start reading this sentence from a famous American artist, Dan Graham. All artists are alike. They dream of doing something that's more social, more collaborative, and more real than art. Now, what does this mean? It means that maybe a lot of people are quite familiar with the traditional way art is happening, the production, display, and sales of objects and pictures. But there's another idea of art that's been around since a long time, even before Mr. Graham. And this is the idea that art can be an experience and a process. And so the production of physical good is only relevant as long as it is participatory, as it is witnessed by the public and shared. Now, the material of this kind of art, it's a very specific material that's very important for today's world, and it's relationship. Now, you will ask why? How can relationship be an art material? Well, think about what you do every day on social media, when you post content, or when you choose a picture, or when you link a friend. You're actually orchestrating relationship. And to give another example, pertinent, we can use also Chinese medicine, where we act on a point of the body to trigger some effects all over other parts of the body. So we're using relationship. So relationship is a very interesting material for art. 6 years ago, I met a very interesting person, a French engineer, Guillaume Bernard, comes from a three-generation family-owned industrial company that has a factory in Beijing and a factory in Paris. And we engaged in a lot of discussion and talks about what's the purpose of art. And we didn't find a purpose, but we found a very interesting side effect. We found that art affects people's sensibility. And I will define sensibility very quickly as this capacity to respond in a very organic but precise way to very complex external stimulation. So sensibility is a sort of fine-tuning between the inner self and the external world. So we start talking about how can we put together art, relationship, reality, and sensibility. And this comes to my business card. Together we created a department, an experimental department inside the company, inside the factory, that is called Social Sensibility Research and Development. And so as an artist today, I'm a social sensibility manager, and I have a salary and I have a contract with a company. But what does this department do in reality? Well, actually, the department brings the presence of contemporary artists from China, from all over the world, to interact constantly, twice a week, with the staff in the company. This interaction is of different kinds. It's very informal. The staff can choose the way it will interact with the artist. They can participate, they can just judge the project, they can witnessing, they can be critical, they can refuse it. After the interaction, the artist will develop a project. And the outcome of the project is the outcome of this encounter. Now, I will show you some examples, but before I will say, what's the purpose of this social sensibility research department? Well, the purpose is to soften the hierarchy, to introduce some creative thinking, but also, and mostly, to introduce a place for contradiction and for critical thinking. Now, I will show you some of the examples. This is an artist who convinced a group of workers to pack the plant manager as the product. So this is an experiment about relationship in terms of power. Then we have another one in which a Japanese artist asked the staff to create a small action that should be non-functional. So it should be a way to avoid that automatic behavior we all have in companies and in working environment. That behavior that lacks empathy, that is hardwired like default setting, and 20 different people reacted with small gesture in the middle of the working time. And this is one of that. And then I have another example is another artist who created an installation using the product of the factory and a film that's carrying on all the faces of the different people in the factory. Now, why this is important? This is a reflection about the relationship between everyone in the plant and their own job, their daily life. But let's get back to the point. What is most important in this practice is not the outcome of these projects. We have almost 40 of them, very different mediums. What is important is this encounter that takes place between an artist and a staff, and is an encounter that has no rules of engagement predefined. The rules of engagement are invented and are negotiated anytime. Now, what does the project do in reality? How it affects people? Well, it affects people in the sense that there are very small micro changes. Some people use the projects and the artists just to have something new in their life. They bring their kids to art classes, they change the way they dress, or they go to art shows. Some other people use it as a way to disconnect from work and really engage in some interesting activity. And some other people use the artist as a third soft channel to address hierarchy with feedbacks or information about problems in the factory. So it's a very complex dynamic, but we have created a shared relational space. Now, why this is important in China? Because in China, generally speaking, there are a lot of unwritten rules embedded in society. And these rules are stronger than any other rules that is imposed by a company or by another institution. So generally, HR and management are quite cold functions, regulatory, because they don't know how to address this deeper level of rules embedded in society. When it comes to social sensibility R&D, this situation was actually quite interesting because the complexity of all these relational aspects helped social sensibility R&D to start and to develop. And now we are developing that in Paris too. If you're thinking outside of China, why should companies engage in long-term collaborations with the artists and hire them and create artist-run department for social engagement research? I think because today the artists are not just outcasts or shamans or strange individuals. I think artists today, they are mediators, strategists, activators of social dynamics. They have a lot of different knowledges. They study science, they study anthropology, philosophy, but they are not specialists or expert in the common sense. So they are capable to orchestrate all this knowledge in a very intriguing and interesting way, especially regarding the relational environment. Now, we're trying to register a new organization called Social Sensibility Research Institute to promote this idea and try to convince more companies and institutions to hire artists to develop long-term residence projects with artists. In this way, we will change art too, because we will transform the relationship between art and the audience, in the sense that in the factory of Bernard Control, the audience is not of art viewers, but is art users. They actually can choose how to do and how to deal with art, and they can witness the creative process next to them and participate to it. Now, sometimes I'm a night person, so sometimes at night I just cool down and think a bit. And I think of a moment of a day when having a social sensibility department or another kind of artist-run department in a company would be as normal as having an HR department or a finance department. And I really think this could be an incredibly transformative force to enhance social imagination. And social imagination is what we mostly need today in China and all over the world. Thank you.